Good evening, dear fellows. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, Lavender, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks, Edna.
Yes,
That's great, thank you. All right, welcome to today's review session. My name is Lavender Ochieng. I am a research assistant at the Africa Research and Impact Network, and I would really love to welcome you and thank you so much for making time to attend today's session. I really hope it will be a very worth it, a very insightful one as the way we've had in the past. So just briefly to introduce the topic and introduce our speaker for today, I'll just take you through it briefly in case you didn't get a chance to see the poster. Our today's topic is looking at the adaptation strategies, the climate change adaptation strategies for coffee farmers in the northern part of Uganda. So the study can just be from any other place, but for today's review, we'll have a case study from the northern Uganda. So we all know that climate change is here with us, it is a reality, and its consequences really affect the ecosystem, the livelihoods, economy, everything worldwide. So in Africa, where 1 million of people depend on agriculture, they're really been affected with climate change, and agriculture is not exempted. I mean, those who are doing various crop farming, be it food crop or cash crop, they've been greatly affected by climate change. And you know that most African countries, their GDP depend on on agriculture, sorry. And the moment agricultural sector has been affected, definitely the country's economy and everything that depends on agriculture will be affected. So looking at today's review session, we are trying to look at how the grassroots community or people who's like the smallholder farmers whose livelihood depend on agriculture, how can they adapt to the various impact of climate change, like extreme weather events, the rainfalls, and etc. So our speaker for today will take us through the strategies, how these people can adapt, and how ready are they to adapt to these strategies that the scientists or even experts are putting out there. So our speaker for today briefly is Mr. Midamba. Mr. Dixon Midamba is a PhD student who is pursuing his PhD in agricultural economy at the Maseno University, that is in Kenya, from the Department of Agricultural Economics and Rural Development. So Mr. Midamba, I welcome you. To all our participants, I encourage a very engaging session. Ask any question, contribute to this conversation, and let's make it as fruitful as possible. So Mr. Midamba, over to you. Let's dive into the conversation. Midamba, if you can hear me, over to you.
Hear me, please?
I can hear you now, but a bit low. Maybe you need to.
A bit low. Sorry. Just need to put. Is it better now?
Better.
Okay, pretty good. Thank you so much, Lavender, for this opportunity to have this discussion together with other people joining from all over the world. Yes, my name is Midamba, like Lavender's mentioned. Midamba is a PhD student at Maseno University, and pursuing my PhD in agricultural economics. Yeah, the Department of Agricultural Economics and Rural Development. I also hold a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics, but then a master's of science in agri-enterprise development from Gulu University in Uganda through MasterCard Foundation funding. So over the years, I've been publishing some papers. Should you look for my name on Google Scholar, I'm sure you'll be able to find it, to see some of the papers that I've disseminated. So today we are going to discuss about coffee farmers' adaptation strategies to climate change in the northern region of Uganda. That is where I studied my MSc from. So I have the experience of that region well. Now, it has been reported that the demand for food globally continues to grow significantly. And this has been evident mostly in African countries, because according to the World Food Program reports, there are 733 million people who are heavily stricken by food insecurity, poverty, and malnutrition. And strikingly, as the population increases, which the global population is expected to hit around 8.6 billion people by the year 2030, which is only 5 years from now. As the population increases, the demand for food continues to increase. You and me will agree that among other continents, there's a high population growth in sub-Saharan, in Africa as a whole. So that means that the demand for food continues to grow significantly in Africa. And majority of those who have been seen as food insecure are staying in Africa, in Asia countries, with Africa, of course, topping the list. Brenda, am I in the second slide from your end? I just want to be sure.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
in Uganda, the Peel of Africa, it has also been reported that around 10 million people suffer from food insecurity, with the majority of these people located in the northern region of Uganda. Of course, the northern region of Uganda is characterized by high temperature. The regions like Gulu, Noya, and Oyam. But then, strikingly, most of these people or the households who tend to be food insecure are our primary economic agents. These are the same people that we depend on to provide for us food, and they are called the smallholder farmers. Reason being, they have agriculture as their main and only source of income. Smallholder farmers are characterized by 1, low literacy levels, 2, financial constraints. So all their resources are skewed towards agriculture as their only sector which can bring for them a source of livelihood. But then agriculture, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, has that ability to reduce the increasing rate of food insecurity, not only in Uganda, but also among other African nations like Kenya, among others. However, we have seen that this sector called agriculture has several challenges. One being the climate variability, 2, infestations of pests and diseases, 3, high cost of inputs such as fertilizers. But then there has been lots of discussions, especially on climate change. Climate change affects and poses great threats to the lives of humans as well as animals. This is evident as seen in the high temperatures reported in many parts of the world. Floods, pest infestations, pests such as the fall armyworm can only survive when there's no adequate rain. So there are farmers. There was a day that last week I went to one of the projects that we are implementing here in Kenya. And I saw onion farmers abandoning their onion farms because rain has stayed for long without pouring down. I've also seen people here in Kenya abandoning their maize farms because rains have not been adequate. So this leads to hopelessness and despair. And if not controlled, if there are no strategies that are employed by these farmers, then they will fully abandon their farming area. Therefore, embracing or adopting climate change adaptation strategies comes in as a viable solution that bridges this gap. So then this study aimed to assess farmers' adaptation strategies to climate change and its predicting factors. We anticipate that the results that we gain from this study will inform policymakers on the relevant policies that can be implemented at the grassroots levels to boost agricultural productivity through adoption of climate change adaptation. So we had 2 objectives. Of course, the second objective, the one which has a lot of weight, but the first objective is also presented. That is to assess the types of strategies employed by the farmers in Northern Uganda, and then two, of course, the predictor variables that are associated with the adoption of climate change adaptation strategies. Economically, according to the principles of economics, farmer would adopt a given adaptation strategy if they perceive such a strategy as having economic benefits. For example, if a farmer wants to adopt a technology like fertilizer, he first perceives these fertilizers having economic benefits, maybe higher returns, and from higher returns or higher yields, they are able to become food secure and, of course, having higher income, which improves their living standards. So our study was adding to the utility maximization theory. This work was done in Northern Uganda. So we conducted a study in Moya and Oyam district. I wish you could have also done the same in Ngulu. Ngulu has high temperature. Then we used a cross-sectional study because of financial constraints. But this study was done among coffee farmers. Yeah, there's a close nexus between coffee and food security. Despite the fact that coffee cannot be, like, it's not one of the food crops as such, but then the high incomes from coffee farming can be used to purchase foods. But again, you see, producing your own food and purchasing food also has their own arguments, which I will not discuss. So we conducted this study on 202 coffee farmers in both districts. That was 100 from Yam and 102 from Noya district. This work employed a multi-stage sampling approach, but then the econometric analysis or approach that we used was multivariate probability along with some descriptive studies. Now, see, adoption of a given technology, let's say organic fertilizer or drought-resistant crops, can take it by a dummy response. Either they adopt or they don't adopt. But then binary dependent models such as probate or logistic are only good when we are considering given study, because these practices have their own associations amongst them. You see, this leads to either positive or a negative association, like supplementing or complementing each other. So multivariate probability model was very suitable for this study. So this work that formed part of our methodology. I didn't want to go into details. I just wanted to have some highlights. So we had these practices like inorganic fertilizer, agroforestry, organic fertilizer, minimum tillage, crop rotation, mulching, and cover crops. Then I just want us to discuss one by one. A practice like inorganic fertilizer. This is one of the technologies that improves soil fertility. And as we know that there's a close relationship, a close positive relationship between soil fertility and agriculture. Soils that are weathered are not able to yield maximum, but soils that are fertile through adoption of inorganic fertilizers are able to maximize their output, and farmers can earn some extra shillings. So adoption of practices like inorganic fertilizer is highly recommended. The other one is agroforestry, which involves planting trees alongside the crops. While there have been discussions that there are trees that there's a competition for nutrients, shades, and all that. But then this is a practice that encourages both planting of trees alongside production of crops such as coffee. So a farmer has a win-win option for them. So this again, a practice which should be adopted as it is significantly important, sorry. Organic fertilizer, especially from the livestock subsector. There's also another technology which should be embraced by farmers. Unlike in organic fertilizers are cheap and readily available, especially among the small-scale farmers. In organic fertilizer, despite being better and maximizing yields among the farmers, of course, their cost of purchase tends to be high. So supplementing this with inorganic fertilizers, such as compost, can help farmers boost their yields in times of harsh economic weather. Minimum tillage. Excess winds can lead to blowing of the topsoil. This reduces the soil fertility. So if farmers can embrace minimum tillage, a practice that does not cost a lot of money, but helps in boosting soil fertility, then they can also be able to earn some extra shilling. There's another practice called crop rotation, planting of different crops, rotating different crops in the same field. If this season we produce maize, the next season let us produce a different crop. The other season we come up with a new crop, or intercropping. Why can't we produce maize alongside other nitrogen fixing crops such as beans? So crop rotation also comes in as one of the best strategy, especially when controlling the buildup of pests and diseases. So this practice was also considered. Mulching, one of the water conservation practices, as we have learned in our lower levels. Mulching helps to conserve or preserve water in the soil. So when rains delay without pouring down, then mulching can help at least to make our crops have some sufficient water as they wait for the rains. Cover crops, being the last strategy which was adopted by the farmers, is a crop that helps to preserve the soil as well as preserving the destruction of the crops, especially during the windy seasons. Here, where I'm currently working, based in Nanyuki, I had the opportunity to visit some of the flower farms, and I saw them practicing cover crops, of course, to avoid blowing away all the crops. Now, these are the practices that are currently employed by the farmers, but strikingly, not all farmers employ these strategies. For example, if we talk about inorganic fertilizer, it is worrying that only 15.85% of the farmers, actually of the 202 sampled farmers, only 32 were able to adopt inorganic fertilizers. This may be attributed, one, to the high cost of adoption or cost of purchase of these fertilizers. The second was agroforestry. Well, it was not that bad, but still way below average. Only 35% of the farmers produce crops alongside their livestock, alongside trees. This is also a worrying situation which needs something to be done on. Organic fertilizer at 22.3%. Imagine, yet I expected organic fertilizers adoption to be at least 60-70% because it is way too cheaper compared to inorganic fertilizer. Then minimum tillage was also adopted, but only by 38.12% of the farmers, representing only 77 of the 200 sample farmers. Rotating different crops. Now, this was one of the practices that were adopted by, let me say, some good number of the farmers at 56%. Then mulching, I think mulching did well because mulching was adopted by 62% of the farmers, while cover crops attracted 83% of. This was wow, this was pretty good. This was very, very good.
Now, looking at these practices, I can see a skewed distribution, with skewedness heading towards cover crops and mulching. But in organic fertilizer, agroforestry, organic fertilizer, minimum tillage, of course, attracting very, very few farmers. And if this trend continues this way, then you see farmers may continue reporting lower yields. And with lower yields, everyone is not safe. Because themselves, they will be discouraged from producing. So they may ought to buy food. But then you see someone who is selling food to you will only sell surpluses. They cannot sell what they need to consume. And even the neighboring nations that export food to other countries, they will only do so when they have surpluses. Otherwise, they will not die of hunger while at the expense of earning an income. So our own production is much, much better because it is that which we put. So as you can see, dear audience, there is some work which needs to be done. Of course, for these practices, at least to go above average. Just a minute. And thank you. So I'll proceed to the next slide. So now our next slide was on what actually dictates or influences the adoption of these practices. So this was from, the results were from multivariate probit analysis, like I mentioned before. So we had several socioeconomic predictors. Their institutional, their household variables, among others. But then when you talk about a practice like cover crops, we see cover crops being adopted, being less adopted in a Noya district that is in Northern Uganda, with farmers who are older are being less adopters. We can see the role of education in adoption of cover crops, as well as farming experience, access to inputs, then strikingly, access to market linkages, which we expected would bring positive association, but of course, there was a negative influence. Then another key predictor variable was market distance. You see, as farmers are located far from the trading centers, they are not only able to have less access to farm inputs, but of course also to agricultural information. On mulching, the same thing. Nowhere was low in mulching, but then gender, we observed that female farmers were less adopters than their fellow male counterparts. The role of education in adoption of mulching was also evident. Then again, we can see that highly experienced farmers being less adopters, but then the other significant variable we can see is training farmers on climate change adaptations, playing a key role here in adoption of mulching. Access to farm inputs. We can also see market distance and extension. Wow, very, very good determinant of adoption of climate change adaptation strategy. The more the extension visits that a farmer accesses, the higher the rate of adoption. Because these extension personnel come with wealth of information on the types of climate change to be adopted, demonstrations, trainings, among others. When we checked on a variable on crop rotation, again, we see female farmers significantly lagging behind. But then age now comes in to play a key role, with older farmers being high adopters of crop rotation.
household size had a negative effect, with larger larger households being less adopters. A similar thing was also shown on experience. But then another key variable is being a member to associations, farmer-led groups and associations. Currently, in sub-Saharan Africa, we have seen that these groups play key roles. One, these are the meeting points where farmers can meet, share ideas, bargain for better prices. So we see being a member to these groups is really improving the rate of adoption. Same to access to farm inputs. But then market linkages again showed a negative and significant influence or likelihood on adoption of crop rotation. So these were the first three practices, but we have, of course, the last four. I hope everyone is with me. I hope I'm not talking to myself. Lavender, just confirm if you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm confident enough that someone's hearing. But then when we came to minimum tillage, now Noya started showing on OYAM the other side of their story by being high adopters. Access to trainings again, as farmers receive these trainings on climate change, adaptation strategies, they become better and better adopters of practices like minimum tillage. Similar to access to farm inputs. Then I see market linkage. I really don't know. Maybe I really needed to check the kind of linkages that they had, but market linkages, of course, showed negative effect. Then location, market distance. Most of these farmers are located deep into the villages where there are information barriers, the high cost of transportation, among others. So the higher they are located to these trading centers, the less the likelihood of adopting practices like minimum tillage. Agroforestry only had around 4 predictor variables, that is in exclusion of the constant. Again, we see training these farmers on climate change adaptation strategies, improving the likelihood of agroforestry adoption. Similar to farm inputs access. Again, market distance, depicting similar results, implying that really the location of these farmers play a key role in the adoption. If all of them can be located near the trading areas where they can come together as groups, they can access credit, access government services, access things like government subsidies, then it can boost adoption of these practices. Those terms are similar to the terms used in recommendation, but we shall come to that section later on. Yeah, my two last guys are organic fertilizer and inorganic fertilizer. Again, NOYA is lagging behind the adoption of organic fertilizer, but we see education again coming in as one of the predictors, the positive predictors of adoption of organic fertilizer. Farming system was categorized into either large scale or small scale farming, with dummy created for large scale farming. So this means that large scale farmers had 59.2% higher likelihood of adoption of organic fertilizer than the small scale farmers. Same to access to farm inputs. Lastly, age. Now, in organic fertilizer, I could have introduced another variable, the price, but that was not captured in the tool. But then age, farmers' age, we saw older farmers becoming less adopters of inorganic fertilizer. But extension visits, the number of visits to the farmers to provide extension services played a key role in adoption of inorganic fertilizers. So the values with the asterisks are the ones that I mentioned because they were the significant predictors of adoption of climate change adaptation strategies at different levels. There was 10%, 5%, as well as 1%. I'll go back a bit to the other results. These were the practices employed by the farmers, and these were their predictor variables, what really predicts the adoption. But then from these predictors, now we can recommend policies based on the econometric results. So from all that analysis and all the results and all that, we thought that these 7 key points would help farmers to boost their adoption rate. 1, we saw that training farmers on climate change adaptation strategies significantly influenced their adoption. So then, why can't the extension officers and the relevant stakeholders build on training farmers on climate change adaptation strategies? They need to be trained because some are not adopting, not because they do not want to adopt, but because they do not know that they need. There are farmers who are used to the traditional methods of farming, which do not yield better results. They're just used to the, like when you come to Kenya, especially in the western part of Kenya, you will find several households producing maize, the same land, maize this year, maize next year, maize is producing the same piece of land for 10 years. They do not know that they need to rotate it among other crops. So if we can build on training these farmers, then I'm pretty sure that the adoption rate of these practices can greatly improve. Practices such as inorganic fertilizer and pesticides, though pesticides is not considered in this study due to there have been lots of talks and discussions about pesticides, especially when not used in the recommended rate. But inorganic fertilizers are capital demanding practices. They are not given for free. But if the government can subsidize their cost, subsidizing the cost of inorganic fertilizers, along other practices such as disease-resistant seeds, you see, then it can increase affordability. Many farmers can be able to afford them and use them in their farms. That way, they will be able to maximize their returns to farm investments, improve their livelihoods and their living standards. Well, this was not from this study, but should be a good recommendation. Diversification to hardy and disease-resistant crop varieties. They are the traditional varieties, yes, but they are these that have been recommended as being hardy and disease-resistant. If you visit Kenya and Uganda, you will realize that there are crops such as millet or sorghum. These are crops that can do well even with rains delay as a result of climate change. So if farmers can diversify, incorporate such kind of crops, then they can be able to get better returns to farm investments. Extension personnel was also seen as one of the significant predictors of adoption of climate change adaptation strategies. Then if they positively influence it, then why can the government and other relevant authorities, based on that, increase the number of extension personnel to reach as far those farmers which are located far deep into the villages? There are those who do not even have access to this information. There are areas which do not even have network. This network they use in the phones, they are not there. So they are in their own world, completely their own world, and they do not know, leave alone adoption of climate change adaptation strategies. No. So they are not adopting because they do not know that they need to adopt. And sometimes there's no one to tell them that they need. So if extension agents can reach such kind of farmers, then that can help. Majority of the households in sub-Saharan Africa today have joined groups. They come up with these. Others are called table banking. Most of them are these financial groups. But if we can also have farmer-led groups and associations where they come in either every week or bi-weekly or every month, then they can be able to discuss, learn amongst themselves, which are the available strategies that we can employ, what is the cost of fertilizer in the farm, in the market, sorry. That way, information dissemination is easier and it reaches as many farmers as possible. They say that when here in Kenya, we use Safaricom as a network provider. Safaricom normally says that when we come together, great things happen. The same way as these farmers, when they come together as a group, as a team, something good will come out of it. And one of the things is having high adoption rate or adoption intensity of climate change adaptation strategies. Currently, there are several programs. There are adult literacy programs. There are also agricultural programs that are aired on. There are those on social media. There's just so many. There are lots of information in agricultural programs, others on climate change, adaptation, and mitigation strategies. If we can encourage our primary economic agents, the farmers, to attend these programs frequently, then I'm pretty sure that this can increase, even if it moves by just an inch, but it can increase the rate of adoption, which has a positive effect on food security and farmers' living standards. Yes, then finally, from these results, we saw that large households were less adopters of climate change adaptation strategies. This may be attributed by the large households have higher demand for food among other household needs, such as we can say fees and all that. So much of their attention may be skewed towards making sure that their households have adequate of these requirements or necessities. So they may not adopt these practices as such. If our personnel can reach such kind of households, and the information from these households is there because there are census done. I don't know, Kenya, after Uganda, I don't know the number of years they take before they do the next one. But if they can even use the primary, the data that they have to access such kind of households, then these will boost the adoption of climate change adaptation strategies. So from this work, you see, it's not all about publishing or of course conceptualization, collection of data, analysis, writing a paper, sending it out to review. They review it, then they give you major, minor corrections, then publish. Then you say, wow, I have achieved a lot. I have a paper published by Scopus Index Journal, Springer Nature, Taylor, San Francis, Xavier, Sage, among the rest, Frontiers. I really don't think that solves the problem as such. What if we go to the ground, to the same farmers that we collected data from, and share with them that from the data that we collected, this is what we got, and this is how we recommend that things should be done henceforth. If then also the extension personnel, this is what we got, this is what we think should be done. Here are our recommendations from the study that we conducted, rather than leaving it at the publication stage. How many farmers actually read our papers? I have papers that are published more than 10 papers, but I'm pretty sure that the farmers who read such kind of papers are maybe located in those Western countries which are developed. But our sub-Saharan Africa, our Africa, their farmers do not even have time. They don't even have airtime to go and do that. And currently, we even see lots of predicaments in Africa. One of the global topics today talks about the USAID funding, which has halted several programs, including agriculture and food security and livelihood. So then we have to come together as Africa, hold hands and help these people, because you are not helping a farmer, but was helping our own selves and our future generations. Sorry, I think I must have talked a lot. Sorry. So that is the end of my presentations. I think we got this room now for discussion. Yeah, we move forward. Oh, what do you think, Lavender?
Thank you so much, Midamba. We actually thinking the same. That was really a very good presentation. I was really learning a lot and loving it as well. So yeah, we are moving to the next session of this review. That is the Q&A session, where I'll welcome anyone with a comment, a question, or any other addition. Feel free to raise your hands or put in the chat section. I can see people raising their hands. Thank you so much. I can also see some people asking or writing in the chat section. I will read them for you as well. So thank you so much, everyone. This is very encouraging. So without further ado, I'll welcome Ronald. Ronald, over to you.
Hello and good evening. Oh, it's afternoon, still afternoon.
Fine, it's fine.
Yeah, my name is Sembaji Ronald and I'm from Uganda. Yeah, I was interested in this study because I work with the National Coffee Research Institute in Uganda. And one of the most amazing things to read was that the study was conducted in Northern Uganda, which is not actually known for coffee farming. So that triggered one of the interests in getting to learn about the findings from Mr. Midamba about coffee farming in Northern Uganda. So that actually probably answers a few of the questions on his findings on things to do with access to information and all that, because previously this area has not been predominantly known for coffee farming. There are new initiatives by the government to actually take coffee farming to these regions. Yeah. Then I was also interested in actually having Mr. Midamba share with us his study area. Yes, he told us the districts, which were Noya and Oyam. Yes, I think to give the audience a good image and impression, maybe he would have actually given us a map, a study map, because technically most of us are not very familiar. I speak for the majority. I don't speak for myself in this case with Uganda, and we don't know exactly where these places are. We would also wish to hear or learn from him because he mentioned extreme temperatures, or actually high temperatures and all these. How high are the high temperatures really in these areas that the studies are being conducted? And on that very note, which coffee species specifically, because there are quite a number of them. At least there are 4 commercially grown coffee species in Uganda. That is the Arabica, the Robusta, the Liberica, among others. So really, which coffee species? Because each one of them has its different adaptation, levels of plasticity to temperature. So we would really wish to learn which coffee species was this specifically, and if it was, let's say, Robusta, which varieties, because somewhere you talk about resistance. The National Coffee Research Institute I work with is a government organization under the National Agriculture Research Organization, which actually has rolled out a number of what we call KRs, or Kituza resistant varieties, which are actually resistant to the coffee wilt disease. So in this case, we would really wish to learn which varieties are these and have they been adopted or not in that regard. And on the key challenges, because I also learned that he mentioned pests somewhere, which are these actually prominent pests in these regions that you are able to identify from the farmers. Because again, when we go to management, still that is actually a function of the kind of pest in the area. Then he also mentioned, I also wish to learn whether he's came across or is familiar with what we call the stepwise climate investment pathways, because there are a couple of them that have been rolled out by IITA, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, that farmers can follow on their way to increase production, but in a more feasible and sustainable way, so that they can ensure the production continues feasibly and sustainably. I also wish to mention somewhere that I had Mr. Midamba note that he's surprised that there are quite a number of the organic fertilizers are less adopted by farmers, which in this case I find a bit okay. I find it in that way because organic fertilizers are actually expensive compared to inorganic fertilizers. And if you look at the region where the study was carried out, you have to look at the concept of circular economy in this way, that this is an area that doesn't have a lot of livestock in this case. So you wouldn't expect farmers in region to really easily have access to organic fertilizers, even when they actually had the information about them on that. Otherwise, I find the study very interesting, and I wish to congratulate Mr. Midamba for putting this together, and also wish him the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronald. The questions are well put. Midamba, I hope you also noting them down. Let's take one more, then you address them. Yeah, then we move to the next person. Nawahenza, Nawahereza, over to you. Nawahereza. Nelson? In case you're speaking, you're on mute. Okay, Nestroy, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lavender. Yes, first of all, I would like to congratulate Midamba for the good presentation. I have just a small question, and this is about the cover crop. In his presentation, he mentioned that, or from the results, it was showed that there was a big percent of farmers who adopted the cover crops. So, and since coffee is a crop which is also in other East African countries, like in Tanzania, probably I would like to know which kind of cover crops that were incorporated in this coffee farmers in Uganda, because there are so many cover crops. That's the one. And the second one is the agroforest. So since the coffee is also a perennial crop, and agroforest also it's a combination of different kind of trees, like fruits, and also wooded trees. So I would like to know which kind of trees were incorporated with these coffee farmers. Thank you, Lavender and Midamba.
Okay, thank you so much, Nestroy. Midamba, over to you. You may start with the Ronald's question, then we move to Nestroy's ones.
Yeah, thank you so much. Been quite some time to hear a voice from Uganda. I'm happy that today is the day, especially the second person who asked the questions. It came out clearly. Yeah, thank you, Ronald. Your first question, study map. Now, because this was just a brief presentation, I did not include the study map. If it was my MSc defense, then definitely I would have include the study map. But I have the study map with me, which has Western, Central, Eastern, Northern Uganda, then Northern Uganda again. Under Northern Uganda, there was Noya and Oyam. Then from Noya, there's Alero, Purongo, Anaka, there's Coach Koli, yes. So, and then something that I would also like to mention to Ronald is that this work was supported by one of the persons who works also for coffee in Northern Uganda. Yes, so the map is there, but unfortunately, I didn't put it as part of the presentation. Yes, you asked a question about the high temperature. I stayed in Gulu for
Midamba,
half
you're on and
years.
off. Midamba, you're on and off. You may be. I think it's instability somewhere.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great, great. Thank you so much. Did you get my point, the study map?
Yes, with a lot of struggle.
Oh, sorry. So is it possible if I can repeat it again?
Yeah.
Yes, like I was saying, Ronald, I have the study map with me. So I can share with you should you request for it. I just didn't introduce it or incorporate it in the slides because this was just a brief. So I didn't see the need of putting in the study map. So your second question was the temperature in Northern Uganda. I stayed in Uganda for 2 years, 2.5 years because of the corona, studying my master's there in Gulu. You and me already know that the temperature, especially in Gulu, is high. I really can't know as high as what, but there are times that it is too hot, like very, very hot. If you get outside out of the room, then you will feel it. And yeah,
I can't quantify, I can't say because there's no time that I've measured the temperature that, oh, it's hot, so it's hot by this Celsius. No. But definitely, it is not, it is very, very hot, especially in the northern region. You talk about coffee species. Yes, there is Robusta and then there is Arabica. However, this work was done on, we didn't specify on the types of species or farmers producing a given species for this study, but rather we consider the general coffee farmers because, as you also mentioned, coffee is currently introduced in these districts. It has not been there for long. You also look at this region. My point of pest was coming in. I didn't analyze pest in this study, but my point of pest was coming in such a way that when for farmers who produce other crops, maize, but then rain delays to pour down, then you see pests such as fall armyworm now can lay eggs and they can attack such crops. So pest was not associated. We didn't check about the pest. And also you had me mentioning that I didn't incorporate pesticides into the study. It's today that a bit expensive. Previously, I'd known that it is the inorganic fertilizers, those that are bought from the trading centers, from the agrovets, that are expensive. Known that. Now, the second person asked, were they incorporating? Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. But then cover crops are those crops that are planted that surround and they prevent the farm from things like excess winds. So any tree, any crop that is planted around the farm with an aim of or with the purpose of preventing excess winds, destructions of the coffee trees were considered as cover crops. But we didn't delve into the finer details of which kind of these trees are you planting. No, we left it as open as, do you have cover crops that are able to protect your coffee should the winds come? And that was captured as a dummy question. Yes and no, or otherwise 1 and 0. Yeah, 1 mean yes and 0 mean otherwise. I think that may also come as one of the same thing trees were incorporated. I would say that these are high value trees. I'm not so good at knowing the names of these trees, like eucalyptus, cypress, something like that. But of course, planting some trees, not those that grows on their own. Those are not planted. Those are not the trees that I'm talking about in this study. But those trees that are planted, you see, a farmer can plant different tree varieties. So knowing the names of these trees that this is the one I planted, this name, no. I really don't think we digged deeper into knowing, but our understanding or our study was more into, do they practice agroforestry? If they do, yes. If they don't, it is an otherwise. So those are the questions that I received from Ronald. In the second person, sorry, I forgot the name. Yeah, is there someone else who would like to have other questions?
Okay, thanks. I think you answered them. Though I didn't hear the aspect of inorganic fertilizer within the area. Ronald had asked something like the area is hot and the aspect of having animal breeding or farming, that area is not there, like the concept of circular economy and inorganic fertilizer. How do you expect them to have inorganic fertilizer yet they don't have animals there? Okay, maybe
Now,
after that, then we go to Nelson.
Yes, Lavender, inorganic fertilizer is not only sourced from the livestock, not really. Farmers can come up with the innovative ways of getting the organic fertilizers. Example is a compost pits, where they can throw the poultry droppings, other trees, blah, 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 such kind of things, and make an inorganic, and make organic fertilizer, sorry. So it is not just from
Animals.
the cow dung, not really. No, not really. What about poultry? Can poultry survive in that area? What about other branches of trees, among others? Yes, Lavender, back to you.
Thanks. I hope, Ronald, you answered. Let's try the same. Nelson, over to you. Then we go to the chat section.
Now you can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Apologies for the previous hiccup. As you put it, I'm Nwahereza Nelson. Interestingly, I'm also from Uganda, but currently I'm doing a PhD at the University of Nigeria. I will not talk as a Ugandan. I will just talk as an academician, mostly to make sure that Madama's work is reliable. To begin with, his study, he says, I'm getting to his title. It is about farmers' adaptation strategies to climate change in Northern Uganda. How, under your study, do you prove that actually these practices that you mentioned, farmers in Northern Uganda have adopted them as a response to climate change, nothing else? Secondly, talking about food security. In my view, talking about food security at the household level would go directly to talk about food crops, not cash crops, and in this case, coffee. What is that direct relationship between coffee and food security? In your recommendations, you talk about adopting hardy, disease-resistant crops. That recommendation is a bit ambiguous. Which varieties are you talking about of crops? Varieties of coffee or any other crops? And what would inform you to mean that other varieties would be more resilient to climate change? Then you talk about larger households being lower adopters of climate change adaptation strategies. I would appreciate how this comes about, given that larger households, by intuition, they would be having higher food demand, and therefore they would be more concerned about having or producing more food to satisfy their food needs. How does this, what explanation is there for this? Thank you very much.
Wow, that was great. That was nice. Yeah, happy that you're asking. Pretty good. Yes, your first question was on, are these farmers adopting these practices because of climate change? Yes, majority of these households are adopting these practices because of climate change, as evident in the low rain reported in many parts, not just in Uganda, but in other nations. Then he says that the crop was a bit, the study was a bit relevant to cash a food crop. Yes, I agree with you to some extent. But what is the definition of food security according to the Food and Agriculture Organization? What are the pillars of food security? There's also the situation whereby affordability, there's access, there's also affordability. A farmer who produces coffee and gets higher returns from coffee is able to purchase food from other nearby communities. So there's a close nexus between cash crop farming and household food security. Should you visit published work, then you realize that actually cash crop farming promotes household food security. Yes, but even food crop, let's say a specific food, you cannot grow maize and then you say that you are food secure from maize alone. Maize alone cannot guarantee household food security because you need additional income to purchase other foods. Maize will contribute to food availability, but not food security. Those are two different terms. But then income from coffee farming or any other cash crop can make you purchase additional food types and food varieties. And then according to the food consumption score or the household food insecurity experience scale, you can be categorized as that household which is food secure. So I would recommend that you take more time to check online on the association between cash crops and food security. Yes, we talk about adoption of
Okay, thank you. I don't know if someone's speaking. I can hear some background voice. Otherwise, you
from
can
my end.
move to the chat. Sorry.
No, just proceed, please.
Great. We can move to the chat section. I can see quite a number of questions there, and time is not on our side, so probably we can go through them very fast. We'll start with Dr. Atela's question. Dr. Atela, I don't know if you can unmute just to ask it, or I read it from this side. Dr. Atela? Okay, just to save one time, I'll read it from this side. It's saying that this is a very excellent empirical work. My explanation will be will be needed to clarify the behavior of the predictors, that is, why will, for instance, large households, sorry, there's an message popping up. Why will large, goodness. Okay, Midamba, can you see it? I'm seeing a lot of messages popping up and it's blocking me.
No, I can't see it. It's from who?
Dr. Taylor.
Dr. Taylor. Oh, is he able to
Okay,
paste it again?
Yeah, it's here. It's saying a more clarification will be needed on why clarifying the behavior of the predictors, while, for instance, large households be poor adopters of those predictors that you mentioned.
Oh, thanks, Doc. Econometric models. You see, if we don't know something, then we study it because we don't know it. But if we have a perception that it should be this way, then we don't need to study something because already we are skewed towards a given conclusion. But then there have been debates about large households having an adequate labor which they can provide in their farms, meaning that they can be high adopters. But the same large households have high dependency ratio. So much of their efforts are skewed towards ensuring that their households have other additional household needs. So these may have negative effects on adoption of such practices because these practices are also labor intensive. Yes, I hope you've gotten my point.
I've gotten it. I don't know if Dr. is well. Dr. I hope you're satisfied with that answer though. Okay, I'm moving to the next person. This is Chris. Chris is saying has quite a number of questions here, close to 8. Chris, we will just answer the ones that we can, just for the interest of time. The first one, when you mentioned about the majority of people in the Northern Uganda being food insecure, it will be helpful to provide a figure or the percentage to give a clearer picture. Okay, so probably Midamba, that is something that you may
Yeah.
need to do, and I don't know.
All right, yeah, it's noted.
Okay, great. And maybe you can just, in case it's not there for future research, that's it. Then also the second one is, while it is true that agriculture is critical for food security, some studies have shown that access to market also plays a very important role in household food security. So nice to see, this is not a question. Okay, nice to see you. You had a market linkage variable in the model. That's more of a comment. Then there's another one. You're discussing food security, yet you selected cash crop, which is coffee. Do you mean to say that farmers earn money from coffee, then buy food from the market? Okay. Then additionally, cash crop are typically male dominated, while women play a significant role in household food security. Why didn't you consider selecting a food crop like cassava, which is more relevant to food security in Northern Uganda?
That is because coffee is currently being promoted in that region. So we need to, by the government. So that was the justification for selecting coffee farmers.
Okay, and then the fourth one, I missed the explanation on how you selected the technologies. There are more technologies that are the ones are used than the ones used in your study, such as intercropping, regular pruning, and trenches. Did you conduct a scoping study, focus group discussion, or literature review to identify the most important technologies? Please clarify.
Yes, prior to this, we reviewed the literature, but then we considered those which have the higher probability of adoption by the farmers. According to us, these were the most relevant practices that we can start with, but then later, if we have a study in other areas, then we can, those are the ones that you have mentioned. And thanks for that comment, much appreciated.
Okay, thanks too. I'll move to the seventh one and the eighth one, probably. So,
Yeah.
because I think I can see the fifth one has been answered, coffee crop being an annual crop or perennial. So number 7, it will be helpful to see the table comparing the socioeconomic characteristic of adopters and non-adopters as part of the descriptive analysis. Midamba, we need to see a table. We need to see a table on that. And then the last one, the use of multivariate profit model can help identify complementary and substitute practices. It will be useful to see. I think these are comments, Chris.
Now, let me just answer.
Okay.
Adopters and non-adopters, such a table is possible and relevant if you are considering a single practice. But if you have multiple practices, then unless you'll be doing adopters and adopters for cover crops, for blah, 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 which, will take a lot of space. Continue, please.
Okay, thanks. So the last two are a bit more of good comments. Brighton saying this study is similar to one done in Zimbabwe and is congratulating you for that. And Mora is also saying that she's doing a similar study and is looking forward to having your paper for review. Congratulations, Midamba. Okay, so I think I've answered it all. I really don't know. I saw someone, Delali, was it Delali? Raising a hand, so probably we'll have that one last question, and then we welcome the closing remark for this Friday. Delali, I saw your hand. Did he drop, Delali? If you can hear me kindly. Okay, probably he dropped. Thank you so much, everyone who made time to make this discussion very fruitful as it is. Dr. Taylor, I really don't know if you can hear me right now. I welcome you to give us the closing remarks, please. Edna, can you hear me?
Yes, Lavender, I can hear you.
Can Dr. Taylor hear me? Flo, can you hear me?
Yes, Lavender, I can hear you.
Please step in for Dr. Taylor and give us the closing remark.
Okay, thank you very much, Lavender. This was quite a very interesting presentation by Mr. Midamba. And one of the aspects of this presentation that strikes me is the reluctance by farmers to adopt certain adaptation strategies. And this actually brought to mind the often underexplored study in the role of indigenous knowledge and farmer-led innovation in shaping effective adaptation strategies. And as the presentation went on, Lavender, I couldn't help but connect it with our locally led adaptation matrix, that is LAMA, as it resonates well with our project in the LREB region. And this is because much of the research focuses on socioeconomic and institutional determinants, but we still have limited understanding of how farmers' traditional knowledge and experiential learning influence their choices and long-term successes of adaptation measures. Lavender, you know that for centuries, farmers across Africa have relied on locally driven techniques to cope with climate variability. And these practices are often overlooked in formal climate adaptation frameworks. And traditional methods such as organic pest control using indigenous plants and locally designed water conservation techniques have actually been key in building resilience for a long time. And yet they have never taken center stage in science discussions. And they remain largely absent from national agricultural policies and extension services. And this leaves a critical gap in how we support small holder farmers. And I'm not just talking about coffee farming. I'm talking about farming in general and especially across Africa. And another missing piece is the social dimension of adaptation. As you know, across Africa, farming communities thrive on informal knowledge and sharing networks through cooperatives, farmer groups, and intergenerational exchanges. And these social structures, they not only help spread climate practices that also create stronger safety nets for farmers that face climate shocks. So recognizing and strengthening these networks is just as important as providing technical solutions. But I want to talk about the South-South cooperation and the role it plays in climate adaptation as it presents the opportunity for scaling up adaptation solutions. Countries that are in the global South, especially Africa, they tend to experience similar climate-related challenges in coffee farming, and not only coffee farming, actually, even in other farming in other crops. And these challenges range from erratic rainfall to pest outbreaks. So facilitating knowledge exchange between coffee farmers in countries in Africa can unlock new insights into best practices. So these are just discussions that I think should just go beyond such forum so that they can actually influence policy. So thank you very much, Lavender, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Flo, for that very well put, elaborate closing remarks. So facilitating knowledge exchange among coffee farmers will really bring out the various insights that can improve the coffee production in Africa, and this can go beyond coffee production to other crops. Thank you so much, everyone. Edna, I'll welcome you to just help us take the last group photo in case you are in a position to. And we call it a week. Edna, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you can turn on our cameras for those who are comfortable doing so.
Sorry, my PC won't allow. I'm so sorry for that.
It's okay, Midamba.
It's okay.
We can all smile.
Okay, thank you. We are done.
Okay, thanks, Edna. Thank you, Florence. Thank you so much, Midamba. And thank you, everyone who made it to this presentation. We look forward to having similar presentation. I can see Dr. Isaiah saying he had the similar research done on the similar topic. We're looking forward to having those presentations. I want to welcome you all to the next presentation that we will be having next Friday. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, and let's touch base same time next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.